Good morning, everyone, and thank you for coming out on this warm morning to our data center meeting. My name is Vanessa Aiken, and on behalf of the Maryland National Capital Park and Planning Commission, Prince George's County Planning, we welcome you. This is your meeting. This is your time to let us know what you want us to hear from you in terms of data centers here in the county. We want to hear your input. We want to hear from each and every one of you. We want you to share your concerns with the residents who you're sitting at your table with. So again, understand, this is your meeting. We want you to be comfortable, relaxed, and spread the word to others that all the information that you receive tonight will be up on our website. And you'll get that information before you leave in our PowerPoint presentation. So now, I would like to introduce to you our Deputy Director of the Prince George's County Planning Department, James Thompson.
All right. Thank you, Vanessa. And again, thank you everyone for coming out tonight, up to this morning, I should say. Apologies, multiple meetings going on recently, but you all did not have to come out here if you didn't necessarily want to. I really appreciate you all coming out, taking time out of your busy schedules to come out on an early Saturday morning. But this actual community meeting is really just like Vanessa said, to get the input from the community. It's not an intent to come back and kind of shove something down someone's throat to a degree. It's what it is saying that we want to talk to the citizens first to see what they want to see as a part of the policy related to the data centers. Do you not want them at all? That's totally fine to make that point today. Say that, put that on the posters that we have in front of you. You can put that as a comment on them. We don't want them at all. We don't want them in certain areas of the county. We don't want them to do this. Or if you do want them, what do you want let's say some mitigating factors? Do you want them, let's say, 1,000 feet from somewhere, right? You can put that in. You say, I don't want them in this side of the county, but I want them over here. Anything else, and as far as community benefits, you see the different tables that we have in front of you. Under the group, table number 1 right here, for example, is talking about community benefit opportunities. Identifying what those are, if there are any, right? So some of the opportunities, for example, could be something along the lines of infrastructure improvements related to water quality, related to transportation, so if you want to widen roadways, whatever you want, as it relates to that. Identifying what those different benefits are, just increasing a higher tax rate for them, whatever that is. You put that out there. This right here is a blank slate, everyone. This is a blank slate. We want you to think out the box on this one, so we can take this information, just like Vanessa was saying a few moments ago, back to the task force members and be able to provide that to them, and they have that information, and we take that as a part of the study that's provided, that goes on to the district council at that point in time. But that said, before I really get into anything, I wanted to take a moment to recognize a few folks. I think we have a representative from Delegate Woods' office. Yes, sir, thank you. And then anyone from any of the council members' offices here today?
Charles County.
Charles County, absolutely, not a problem. Thank you, Charles County, not a problem at all, thank you. And then also, I think we have Mayor Waters in the back, who's Mayor Eagle Harbor. Appreciate you coming out. Mayor Waters came out to the last one, and he was very informative, gave a lot of great information, great feedback. Again, we want to do that, have that opportunity for each of you the same way. Anyone else? We have a task force member right here today. So she's part of the task force. We'll take an opportunity to speak real quick. Ms. Stacy, just wait. There we go. All right.
So, I want you to know I'm here to represent the people. I sit on that task force and I think about your interests and the impacts of these things on your community, and I'm one of the very few who does that. So, be aware.
Thank you. So again, today we want to get that feedback from you all, what that looks like, and be able to provide that information back to the task force members as well as the district council once they get to that point a little bit later down the road. Before we get started, I wanted to talk about some background information when it comes to data centers, because one of the questions that has often come up is regarding the process. The approval process for a data center here in Prince George's County. It's not the same for every municipality or local jurisdiction in the state of Maryland or around the country. Every jurisdiction has their own rules and regulations regarding data centers or any type of use that's out there. So as it relates to data centers here in Prince George's County, the first step in the development process is to ensure the zoning permits that potential use to go at that location, at that site. So the zones are already designated throughout Prince George's County. If you all recall back in like 2018, 2019, you might have seen a flyer for a comprehensive map amendment or zoning map amendment. There was a long process behind it, but at that time it was determined all the different zones throughout Prince George's County. That set the stage for where zones were located throughout the county. As a part of that process, it indicated also the different uses out there. And that was a part of the process. It indicated there was certain uses, certain areas throughout Prince George's County where a qualified data center would be permitted. Some of those zones, for example, are, I think it was the rural residential zone, which is more so those properties you see around Clinton. You've seen those there. Brandywine has some areas right there. And I'm just putting them into perspective for the folks in the southern part of the county. A lot of times you see them around the Beltway in those more suburban areas of the county as well. You may see them in Westphalia, the Upper Marlboro area, things like that. These properties are about larger lots, almost an acre, for example, things like that, but primarily single-family detached homes. They're also in the CGO, the Commercial General Office Zone. That zone is primarily where you see a lot of shopping centers. There's shopping centers along, let's say, 210, in the northern part of the county. Also, it gives, for those zones, it allows for both a mix of residential as well as commercial uses there in that property. They're also what we call a the TAC Edge and TAC Core zones. Those are some zones in which it's more transit activity centers throughout the county. You see them where there are also some neighborhood serving uses in those areas adjacent to residential as well. Some of those are located, like for example, Westphalia, that's a TAC Edge zone over there. Also, there's the Neighborhood Activity Center zone. That zone is along what you see along in Rivertown, for example, that shopping center in Rivertown. That's designated in an AC zone as well. So that's just some examples. It's not all of them, but that's the examples what we're trying to see. But as part of this process, it's going to identify exactly, you all can identify where you want to see these take place. If you don't want them in those areas, say that, okay? We want to hear from you. It's not at the part where we already know what we want. We don't know. We do not know. There's no already intended things when it comes to this. We want to get more information from you to be able to provide that, communicate that back to the decision makers so they can develop a policy. So that said, as a part of the process, each one of the data centers has to go through what we call a preliminary plan of subdivision, okay? What that means is that it's a public hearing process where the applicant comes in and they say, hey, I want to do, let's say, for example, this situation, they want to do a data center at a potential site. As a part of that process, staff and the planning department has to do an analysis to see there's significant infrastructure in the area that supports that use and that proposal that's going in. So what they're doing is they're looking at water that's serving the site, looking at police and fire response times when it comes to the infrastructure that the county has to provide, in addition to environmental impacts as well. So all these different factors are taking place through the preliminary plan of subdivision process. The staff will generate a staff report and with a recommendation to the planning board. And then the planning board will hold a public hearing where they see the staff report. In addition to that, they're going to hear from the community, the citizens, on what they want to see as it relates to that use, or if they don't want to see it at all. They hear all that as a part of that process, and then a decision is made at that point in time. Now, if you want to recommend a change to that process, that's what this is about today. If you want to change that process to say, hey, this needs to go before the county council or something like that, you can make that as a part of a recommendation that you have here today. It would be probably best to put it as a part of the, I think the site considerations and building design group. So, and the team will we're going to really good information and discussion about what will take place as a part of today's expectation. But each one of you will be able to kind of have discussions and provide comments back on each of these three groups that we have here today. So that said, I will continue to wrap up here. I've talked quite a bit, but again, if you have any questions, I want to be very clear. If anyone has any questions, I'm here to answer them. We're here, there's a whole team here. I want to recognize our folks. We have some interns in the room, I believe, I think we have some from Bowie State University, as well as Howard University. If y'all want to raise your hand. There we go. Absolutely, all right. But yeah, I want to make it very clear. We're here to answer your questions. You are being heard. That's what the intent of this is, to make sure you're being heard. So what we'll do as a part of that process is I'm going to be here going around, I'm going to be in the group for the site considerations and building design. Ask you whatever questions you want to. I don't care if it's related to mitigation strategies, or community benefits? If you want to ask me that at that point in time, that's fine. I'll take, if you want to at the end, I'll stick around at the end until everybody's questions are answered as much as possible. If I do not have an answer to your question, I will give you my information and I will go look it up and I will get back to you, okay? I will be honest and tell you I don't know, because I'm not gonna say I know everything, because I don't. But the point is to be able to make sure I tell you all I don't know, but I'm gonna get back to you, okay? So I can get you that answer. That said, I'm gonna wrap up here and turn it over to Elaine. She's with our Gensler team, who's our consultant for this project. Thank you, Elaine.
Thank you, and thank you all for joining us this morning. And thank you, James and Vanessa, for the intro. To kind of walk us through our agenda, and then we'll kind of get into some more conversation. We have a short presentation to just get everybody some common talking points and common ground in terms of what we'll be covering and talking about today. And then the bulk of our time is really in roundtables. So as James was mentioning, we wanted to make sure we have a lot of time to answer direct questions one-on-one and have space with each of you. So the roundtables we'll be doing for the kind of the last hour and a half of our time together. We'll have an opportunity to sit in each of the different categories, or we'll actually be moving around, and help you all kind of talk through and facilitate the conversations. Yes?
And my apologies, we have Chair Jones in the back. He's the co-chair of the Data Center Task Force. I'm gonna take a moment to recognize him as well. Thank you for attending, thank you.
All right. So one of the things James was starting to mention was about the task force. So we wanted to take a moment to talk about the task force itself. The task force was established in April of this year to address the impact of data centers on the following: existing and future local energy demands, potential impact to county ratepayers and taxpayers, environmental impact and mitigation strategies, and impact to quality of life factors. So the task force has been meeting in a live broadcast session. The recorded meetings are available on the website. So for those that haven't had the opportunity to watch those, they are available. And as mentioned, I think it was Stacy that's from the task force that's here, as well as others. So I think this has been a really meaningful space for a lot of conversation and discussion. As I mentioned, the meetings are broadcast, but they are open to participation if you do want to go in person. We put a QR code. The website has been a really great resource. All of the previous meetings are recorded and available online. Upcoming meetings, we have September 10th, October 8th, and November 12th at 11 a.m. at 1616 McCormick Drive in Largo. So again, the website has a lot of really great information. Yeah.
Could you read the website? It's in a color, it doesn't come out.
Yeah. If you put your phone, you can do the camera on your phone and the QR code, and it'll come up. Sure. I can read the website to you. pgcouncil.us/105/qualified-data-center-task-force.
I will provide everyone with a copy of the
Yes.
PowerPoint, so if you didn't get a chance to write all that down, you will have a copy of this PowerPoint that will have all the information in it.
Yes, we have those black and white copies to hand out as well. So as mentioned, we were brought on as a consultant to help the MNC, PPC, Prince George's Planning Department in this public engagement process and to gather this input as well as help to support this study. So we wanted to make sure that, again, as James was mentioning, the intention of these meetings is really to gather information. We're here to really understand what are the current concerns, what are some of the questions that you may have, and what are potential opportunities that might relate to these kind of developments in the county. So the categories and the way the roundtables are set up are to really uncover those three areas of discussion. The parts of the study include both the community feedback, these meetings that you're participating in, as well as studying other counties and what they've been doing relative to policy and guidelines. So looking at what are more recent guidelines and policies that whether it's adjacent or in other parts of the country, what are they doing as data center development is continuing to happen? What are some of the things that people are doing to safeguard citizen interest? And then kind of bringing forth whatever best practices research we have to consider. One of the things that the feedback out of these meetings will be collected and shared back in one of the task force meetings. So we're targeting that, I think, for initial feedback in September, and then the report will be completed in November. So those are two opportunities to connect on how we'll progress and share back with you the information that we've been collecting. This is the third, sorry, we should be highlighted over there. This is the third of our 3 meetings. that we've had. So we've had, for the first few, we had really great attendance Thursday. I think it was about, I don't know, 60-something people. No, we had more, like 75, 80. Yeah, 75, 80. Sorry, yeah, the first meeting was around 60. So it's been a really great, robust conversation, a lot of again, really great input at the tables, and really looking forward to how we kind of look at those different themes and things that are consistent across all three groups. But we've had a really great engagement so far. In terms of the team that's here to help today to lead the conversation, again, I introduce myself, Elaine. I lead our public engagement work at Gensler, the company that we work for. But with us today, we have, I'll ask my colleagues to raise their hand and they'll be at your tables facilitating. We have Evan, Sean, where's Johnny is right there in the back in the middle, and Jenna is also somewhere maybe. There she is, yes, hiding behind this column. So they'll be with you at the tables, as well as our colleagues and our planning interns from the planning department. So again, wanting to make sure that we can have like really deeper, smaller conversations to really get into some great information. So our goals today, first is to explore benefits and potential impacts around data center development. Second, to understand concerns. Third, to gather opinions or considerations, as James was mentioning, to inform future planning and policy recommendations. There's nothing on the table that we're proposing as new development as part of today's conversation, so just to reiterate that point. So we wanted to kick off with an overview of data centers, what they are, what's driving their growth, some topics of interest, and some key site considerations. So first, it helps to establish what is a data center. Data centers are buildings that house the infrastructure that supports the world's computing functions. They're processing and storing data that we might know as the cloud. Their primary function is processing and accessing this data, but they also store data, safeguarding information in secure environments that help to protect it from hackers. Sorry, I think I skipped to the next slide. Here we are. Increasingly, what we're seeing is, our lives are increasingly becoming more and more digital. And so whether that's email or streaming or gaming, in addition to managing our healthcare records, financial systems, and of course, as we're seeing a lot of conversation around AI right now, data centers impact all of us. They're sort of a part of whether it's residents, businesses, education, healthcare, or government and financial institutions. It's really kind of a big space right now and a lot of changing factors and considerations. So we want to unpack a little bit further what's driving some of this growth. Post-pandemic, there was definitely a significant increase in digital activity. And especially, as I mentioned, with the integration of AI in more and more spaces that we interact with day to day, our daily lives, whether it's personal or through work, much of it is in the cloud, and all of this is connected to the data centers that help to drive that. In addition to the rapid growth in digital activity, our local and national infrastructure is also supported by data centers. They enable reliable connectivity for businesses, for schools, government functions, and serve as, again, the backbone for a lot of sectors that we interact with, like healthcare, finance, logistics, and research. So communities are voicing concerns about land use, sustainability, and equity, and there's a lot of competing views on economic benefits, of course, versus the environmental and social impacts. So a lot of what we want to talk about today is, are there benefits, and what are the impacts that we need to consider or think about? So some of the key topics of interest that we'll talk through: economic development, local digital connectivity, community and civic benefits, tax revenue, digital infrastructure, and potential for sustainability. So relative to economic development, jobs always come up in this conversation. There are high-paying jobs as in the construction of these facilities, and while it may be for a small number of folks that are running these facilities long-term, it does bring a lot of opportunity to skill build for tradespeople that are connecting to the construction of these. Sorry.
It's so relative what you're saying. Can you give us some perspective on those many jobs that you're talking about in the individual centers?
In what capacity?
In what you said there were a lot of jobs.
I'm sorry. Real quick, I just want to let her get through a presentation first. We'll get back to that. Just hang tight. Let's get to the presentation first. Again, if you have questions on things, I will answer those questions, what we have, and if we don't know that, we'll tell you we don't know. We'll get that information back to you. But I want to be very clear on that real quick. Okay.
Sure. So one of the things in the last task force meeting, there was we had somebody from the local electrician, I believe, union. He came out and he sort of talked about the impact of these opportunities and these construction opportunities for their union. So again, there's some interesting from the previous task force meetings. There's been some interesting information relative to that. I think for the conversation today, it's more of a general point that we've understood that that relative to the construction, there's value in terms of how it's creating opportunities for local tradespeople, in addition to indirect job opportunities as the long-term operations and long-term development of these moves forward. So again, direct jobs as well as indirect jobs to consider. One of the things relative to tax revenue, we've seen in other counties where this sort of development has taken place that there can be significant local tax revenue that's generated, both real and personal property taxes. We've seen that in other counties, this has reduced tax burdens for residents, and that revenue can result in reinvesting, whether it's in schools, infrastructure, or other public services. In Loudoun County specifically, they have seen their residential property taxes decreased by over a third in the last decade as a result of increased revenue from data center development. Now, while we understand Prince George's is a different context, it does illustrate that there is potential for how data center development can contribute to tax burden relief and lead to hopefully direct investment by the county to community infrastructure that would add value back to the community. So again, a consideration. Relative to local digital connectivity, we see data centers also helping to enhance local access to high-speed internet and cloud services, and by extension, it can make this a more appealing area for tech-driven businesses. From a digital infrastructure standpoint, it helps to power essential online services, whether that's banking, healthcare, education, emergency services, as well as kind of more broadly helping the U.S. Be more distributed in terms of how it's supporting these kinds of global tech needs. From a community and civic benefits, again, we'll have a table that talks about this a little bit more, but we're seeing that there's values and opportunities to fund community benefits, and whether that's workforce training, STEM education, renewable projects. We've seen improvements in utility infrastructure that benefits both data centers and local residents. And we've seen stable long-term capital investment that may otherwise lack large-scale development. So all of these are things that we've seen in other communities that have taken this on and attached these kinds of community benefits to this type of development. In terms of sustainability potential, and we'll talk through some of these different types of data centers, hyperscalers can drive demand for renewables. So it is an opportunity to, whether it's accelerating the grid modernization or helping invest in sustainable infrastructure like more recycled water access. So again, different opportunities for how it can help to modernize and create investment for the county.
Are there a number of measures you bring out that department? Are you only bringing out policy?
Well, this part is focused on some of the policies. We're going to cover those in just a moment.
Okay, great.
Or some of the site considerations, how it connects. Sure. Some of the things that we've seen counties create guidelines around. So again, this is going to connect to the concern areas that have often come up. One is around water demand and quality. So how is it impacting potential water demand or water quality? Land use and site design. So some of the considerations, as James was mentioning, whether that's a distance for development or different things that you might require in terms of approach to the design of the building. Certainly around energy demand and efficiency, requiring certain things in terms of, impact and impact to ratepayers, et cetera. We talked about building design, noise mitigation and monitoring. Noise often comes up. What are we going to hear? How is that going to impact our experience? Air quality monitoring, and again, community benefits. So in other counties that have created these guidelines or advanced their guidelines around this development, all 7 of these are things that we've seen people provide regulation and guidelines around. So it's going to be helpful to talk through types, and then we're going to talk about site considerations, which will help to unpack some of the potential impacts. So in terms of types of data centers, there's 4 kind of categories that are helpful to understand. The first is probably the smallest footprint, that's 5,000 to 10,000 square feet. Oh, I think I have images that go with these, yes. So 5,000 to 10,000 square feet. These are considered edge data centers. They're smaller, they're located largely to end users. They may be helping to increase, an operator may be putting these in to increase streaming speeds or doing something to help to improve user experience in different locations. So these are your smallest footprint. They could be the size of a room. They're in a building. You may not even know that they're there. The second is the enterprise or corporate size. This is probably 10,000, 50,000 square feet. These are often owned and operated by a single organization. This could be a university. This could be a corporate campus where it's really supporting their internal IT needs. So this is sort of a second category to be aware of. And then the third and fourth are probably the ones that we're kind of more aware of in this conversation, the co-location, single building. So that's, call it 50,000 to up to 350,000 square feet. It could be anywhere from 1 to 10 acres. These are likely a single building that are offering space for either multiple clients or single users that may be coming in. And then the hyperscales, which these are those larger facilities, the multiple building campuses. Those could be over 350,000 square feet, over 10 acres, and that's kind of taking that building and kind of multiplying it over a campus. And those are providers like Amazon, Microsoft, Google. They're really looking for kind of scalability and connectivity. So again, some different sizes to consider, and of course, different concerns as they may relate to these different sizes. So 5 key site considerations that drive data center development. So we'll talk through power, water, land use, roads, and fiber. And for those that want to skip ahead, we can do that too. So it is important to note, data centers are power intensive, and reliable access to power is essential for operations, and can potentially limit where data centers can locate. One of the things we are seeing, so that power intensiveness is one of the common concerns that we hear. And how is this going to impact us? So one of the things we are seeing relative to how things have been moving more recently is we're seeing data centers are increasingly energy efficient. And we're seeing more improvements relative to server technology, more efficient cooling, and greater use of renewable energy. There's also one of the things that we've been seeing is on-site power generation. Which can help ease the strain on local power grids. So again, this conversation on power is very evolving. And while there are those significant power demands, we are seeing some evolutions in the industry in terms of how they're responding. In terms of water usage, again, this is another one that often comes up and is a major consideration. Data centers do use water for cooling their systems, which means they require more water than typical industrial facilities, and that can place pressure on local municipal supplies. We are seeing, again, industry is adapting because of general concerns like the ones that you may feel. We are seeing more technologies like closed loop systems, air-cooled systems that reduce water use. Many facilities are using reclaimed or non-potable water that reduces reliance on those municipal systems. But what it means is that the county or municipality needs to have enough of that infrastructure in place to deliver that reclaimed water. So I think this is one of those opportunities where local government has to, we can look at investments that help to make that capacity for local government as this development may be happening or coming in. When we think about land use, again, another concern, depending on the size of the data center, there's certainly land, as we talked through those different sizes and scales, land is necessary to accommodate the facilities and accompanying infrastructure. So again, especially when you're in that hyperscale space, there's a fair amount of space that those could take up. The building itself is part of that equation, as well as equipment like backup generators or cooling units. We are, again, when we look at what is happening in the future and how this is, what are things that we can consider, is newer designs are more compact and efficient, but there's also a push and an opportunity to encourage using land that's already been developed or disturbed. Rather than greenfield sites, how are we using old industrial sites so we're not taking undeveloped land or natural areas unnecessarily. So again, some opportunities and things to consider that can reduce the pressure on undeveloped land. In terms of roads and access, access is key. They typically require reliable roads for construction, equipment delivery, and long-term operations. Having access to nearby highways and logistics can reduce traffic problems and help project run more smoothly. Fortunately, most projects today are planned near existing infrastructure, but as James mentioned, if there is an interest or opportunity to use this as a way to develop road infrastructure that's of value, there are ways to consider these things. So again, looking for what are those things that we can use to create value from a community perspective as things that they may be looking for to develop. And then lastly, fiber. Data centers need fast and reliable internet, specifically fiber optic cables, and this is largely how they're moving information from users between businesses and other data centers. And while fiber networks in many areas are improving, this is also an opportunity to, again, increase fiber access for businesses, for homes, which can mean faster internet and faster, more tech opportunities from a community perspective and a business perspective. So of those 5 considerations, kind of what are the when we look at the community benefits specifically, again, some key categories that we're seeing common opportunity. One is around environmental sustainability and looking for certain investments and interests, local hiring and contracting, economic growth, investing in community infrastructure, and then community support and integration. So a couple of examples, we've seen vocational programs that could be supported at local community colleges, incubator programs for small businesses that could be engaged, whether it's in the construction or long-term operations. We've also seen opportunities where an operator might invest in, again, like infrastructure, whether it's fiber, broadband, or other, that can support the facility or surrounding communities. Other things that we've seen are like offsets where they may be investing in community infrastructure like libraries or schools or other recreational facilities. So what are those ways that as you're trying to find opportunities to connect back to value for the community, these are the kinds of categories we might have some conversations around at our tables. So what we wanted to do is to dive into our table conversation, so you all have as much time as possible to ask your questions and to dig into some of this. So as you can see, we have the 3 categories, the 1, 2, and 3. So the kinds of things that we'll talk about in 1 is the slide that we were just looking at, that community benefits category. So that's things related to workforce development, potentially those tax revenue opportunities, local partnerships, infrastructure investments. Again, it can sort of be wherever you need to take the conversation. The 2 folks that'll be facilitating this will be Evan and Jenna. So they'll be over here to host you. In the middle, common concerns and mitigation strategies. That's the second section. The kinds of things that we might talk about, noise, energy use, water consumptions, potential public costs, and not wanting those public costs. So that's in this middle section. And then, as James was mentioning, site considerations, and building design, that will be led by James and Sean. The kinds of things you might talk about there are site access and location, architectural design and screening, sustainability strategies, and environmental performance. So again, we'll have opportunities. We'll spend about 20 minutes, we'll look at the timing here. Yeah, around 20-ish minutes at each table. So that you can have time to kind of share your thoughts and feelings, hear from others at the table. And we also will track the notes across the table so you can see what others have said before you. And again, as I mentioned earlier, we'll be sharing, like we've done this in the other 2 meetings as well, so we'll be sharing back everything that everyone has said and summarizing across the 3 meetings, so you can sort of see in aggregate what are some of the general things that we've heard across the 3 meetings.
When do we get to be in each group, or?
Yes. So
You just be in one staff spot, and then the moderators?
we're going to come to you. So the way that we've done this both ways, we had it where people switched, and then they were not, that created some disruption. So I think we're going to do it where we switch, and you guys stay where you are, and we're totally fine with that. Yes.
So, good morning, everyone. So in the spirit of transparency and accountability, right? I think, in my opinion, for the greater good of the audience here, that we can go back to that topic of interest slide that you had there. Because if we just go through the meetings right now, and each one's going to take 20 minutes, we're not going to have time to come back to that slide. And I believe there were a lot of questions on there around direct impact, high-paying jobs, construction, and things like that. I think we can come, in my opinion, I think we should at least address some of those concerns, expanded explanations on those, and then do a breakout session, as opposed to going to a breakout session, doing a feedback session on that, and then not being able to get back to those topics within.
Each of the topics you're talking about is going to be shared at each table. So when you go through the table, you will be able to provide information on community benefits, impacts, economic development, tax revenue, environmental. They are all part of the discussion at each individual table. And then we will come back. So we're hoping that you will share your concerns at the table in which we're talking about that specific topic matter.
And to your point, it's really going to be, so if you have a question or a comment that you want to make, you can put that on a sticky note, and we can go right into that conversation for each one of those and answer all the questions related to that. And then again, have that conversation. If you would like that kind of mention for each one of those, we can do that at each one of those as we kind of move from each group to group. That's there. We want to be able to kind of actually capture that as a part of the dialogue, as well as what's provided back to the task force. We got to document all these things, so in order to do that, we'll be able to kind of have that information to take back. So we'll kind of have it documented at that point, so it's very clear and clarity purposes for the record.
All right, so
Yeah, so just to get started, is this a process question?
Well, it's been a nice conversation, but what about traffic? You know what traffic is like in the city?
We'll talk, I'll come and talk to you about that at the table. So what I'd like to do is set up into where you see the, you know how you guys want to split up into the sides? So, we'll put our facilitators at each of the tables so we can sort of get organized. If you're at one of the middle tables, I would just ask that you go to, we're trying to get around like 8 people per table, or 8 to 10 around per table. So if you're at a middle table, we would ask you to join one of the tables that has a number on it, so that we can have, you know, the different conversations. As we mentioned, the task force meetings that are coming up are September, October, and November at 11 a.m. If I can get everybody's attention for just a minute, and then you can keep chatting at your tables. We'll be sharing the draft report that captures this information as well as the other parts of the study in November. And I think we're sharing some initial findings just from these meetings in September. So both of those things will be part of those task force meetings. And then, yes, just again, additional information, the website with the QR code for those that need it. There's an email if you have additional questions or comments, feel free to email this address. We also have paper on the tables for additional comments, and we have the board. So wherever you'd like to put your comments and questions, we've tried to make as many places as possible to make sure we're getting you the information that you need. Just a quick thank you to everyone. We know it's a lot to ask to come out on a Saturday morning, so we really appreciate everybody's time and input. And we will, again, be collecting all of this and putting it back into a report that we share back with everyone. So thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day. Have a great rest of your weekend. And look forward to seeing you all again. Thanks.